So oftentimes people say, well, I don't have ordinance and law coverage, so the carrier is saying that they don't owe for code required items. And that's a ridiculous statement because everything has code related to it. You can't build anything in the U.S. anywhere without following some kind of a code or manufacturer spec. So if you have to have ordinance and law coverage just to pay for anything that's code related, then you would have to have ordinance and law coverage to pay for the entire project every time. So what does coverage A, coverage B even cover at that point? They wouldn't cover anything because you're doing everything in order to meet specific codes. So that's an asinine deal. It's illusory coverage. You'd be paying for coverages you'd never receive. So if you say, well, I have to replace the flashing because the code says that I cannot reuse flashing that is damaged, deteriorated, or rusted, well, yeah, that is the code that says you can't reuse it. But you are replacing that flashing that already exists on that roof with exactly the same flashing, then you're not bringing it up to code. That is not a code coverage issue. Building code coverage or ordinance and law coverage, law and ordinance coverage, this is bringing you up to code. It's covering the increased costs caused by the enforcement of a local code. The increased cost has to increase from something. That something, that baseline, is the RCV value. And RCV is based on replacing what's currently there with like, kind, and quality. So if you've got flashing on the roof and you remove that and replace it with the same flashing, you're replacing it with like, kind, and quality, there's no increase. If I have to replace that flashing with something that's better because the code has changed, now there's an increase in price from what was currently there to the better stuff. What is that difference in cost? Ordinance and law would have to be there to pay for that increase. Now, many times ordinance and law coverage also pays for compliance with code, but that wouldn't be necessary to use until you've exhausted all of the coverage from coverage A. So if you have a total loss scenario and $500,000 is coverage A limit, and you spend $500,000 and then you have another $20,000 or $50,000 left, well, ordinance and law can pay for compliance with code on top of, as an additional coverage, on top of coverage A at that point. But generally speaking, for most roof claims, that isn't going to be an issue. Ordinance and law would only have to be there if you were bringing the property up to current code, and it isn't to current code. Something has changed. They call it code upgrade coverage or nickname it code upgrade coverage for that reason. So all you really need to do is prove what's currently there. Prove that there's a nail in it. When you remove this roof, you're going to have to remove that nail, leaving a nail hole behind. That flashing is now in a position where it must be replaced with like, kind, and quality, which is covered under coverage A. It makes no sense that the carriers are forcing you to use code upgrade coverage when there isn't an upgrade being applied. And a lot of times they just don't realize that the flashing is going to be manipulated in such a way or have nail holes in it so that it can't be reused. And if they're just explained that, if you can prove that the flashing is not going to be able to be reused, then that resolves most of these issues. You're just going back with like, kind, and quality. So an argument that you can make as a contractor is here's a nail that's going through it, and it's going through the flashing, and it's going through shingles underneath that, and then felt, and then decking. I have to remove that nail to remove the shingles, leaving a nail hole behind. Nail behind means it's damaged. I cannot reuse the flashing any longer. I need to replace the flashing with like, kind, and quality. And so we're going to replace the flashing with the same flashing as what you might put in your report in order to maintain warranties. You don't need code upgrade coverage. You might not even have to say that it's code related if that helps you with the argument. But I think carriers just get this wrong too often because the adjusters that are assigned to these things just don't understand it. So we have to help by proving it and explaining these things.